Hey U.S. history students, so we are here in our garage because it's too cold to film outside. Today we're going to be talking about the beginning of the Civil War and the advantages that the North had over the South. Now first, I want you to know that the North has several different names. It was called the United States of America. It was also called the Union because they were the ones who stayed united and stayed together. They also were called the Blue because the military uniforms of the United States were a dark blue wool jacket and blue pants, a lighter blue pant. Over here we have the Confederacy, or the South. So the South was represented by being called the Gray because many of their leaders' uniforms were gray, but a lot of people from the South didn't actually have an official uniform. Remember, the South is a brand new country. The Confederate States of America are brand new. They've just been formed, and they don't have a lot of money yet. Brand new countries never have money. We talked about that earlier this year. So just the military officers had uniforms, and many others just wore whatever they had. Some of them didn't have much. So they were called the Blue and the Gray, the North and the South, the United States of America, the Confederate States of America. Now, the North had some significant advantages, and so I'm going to represent that by bringing in my husband, Mr. Isham. So the North has many, many advantages. One of the advantages that the North had is that they were already a country, so they already had a strong navy. They had a pretty good army as well, but they didn't have to create all this from scratch. The South was going to have to come up with a navy and army from scratch. The North had lots of ships that they were going to use to blockade the South and make it so that they couldn't get the supplies that they needed. So having a strong navy was a good advantage. Another one is, as you remember from everything we learned about in chapter 14, the North is an industrial society. The South is all about agriculture, but the North is about industry and manufacturing. And they have lots and lots of factories. The North had 119,500 factories compared to the South only having about 20,000 factories. So the North had way more opportunity to convert their industry over to making war supplies, and they were going to be able to get the supplies that they needed. The question for the South was going to be, where are they going to get their supplies from? Right now they buy them from the North. They're going to try to buy them from England, but we're going to blockade them with a navy. So that's another huge advantage of the North. Another advantage of the North is they had most of the railroad lines in the nation. 70% of the nation's railroad lines were in the North, crisscrossing all over the North. There's a map in chapter 14 if you want to see it. So they're going to be able to ship the supplies that their military needs much, much easier and much faster because of that. Another big advantage that the Union had was that they had more farmland overall. Even though the South was known for its industry, agriculture, and they were known for their cash crops like tobacco and cotton, they made tons of money off of that, which is why they were able to have some nice lifestyles in the South. The North actually grew more food, so they were going to have much more ability to feed their army and feed their people. The North actually had 105,835 acres of farmland compared to the South only having about half that much. And of course in the North they were growing more food, so they had more ability to do that. There we go. One more big advantage of the North was that they had a larger population, a much, much larger population. They had 4 times the amount of free people living in the North as they did in the South, which means as more and more people join the military and there's more battles and more people die, the North has more young men and boys and men of all ages to draft into the military. So during the Civil War, the North actually has more casualties than the South, but they have such a larger population that they're not decimated quite as much. All right, so we're going to add all of the North's advantages. You can see that I've got Graceland and Eleanor here. They're both, close to the same size, similar strength, but the North has a lot of advantages in this tug of war that's going to happen between the North and the South. And who do you think is going to win? Wait, it's not that simple. The South has some major advantages too. I'm not going to tell you what they are because Mrs. Hicks is making that video, but the South has some major advantages that they're going to bring into this fight. And it's not going to be as cut and dry as we think. If the North had all those advantages and the South had nothing, the war would have been over in a couple months. But unfortunately, the South had quite a bit of strength. This guy over here has been doing wood and lots of stuff. We'll see how he fares against Dad. Are you ready?
No.
No, get a good grip. Ready, set, go. I think this war might last